guided someone? Gabriel, you're not supposed to talk to people or be visible.
I know that.
Then why did you do this?
He was a lost soul. I tried to show him that wealth wouldn't solve all his problems.
And?
It seems to have solved most of his problems.
Welcome to Money Unplugged. I'm Chris Hill. Thanks for being here. Have a seat wherever you like. There's plenty of room. In fact, if you want to bring a friend next time, no problem. Tell a friend. Plenty of seats available at Money Unplugged. Today on the show, I talk with Matt Koppenheffer. He's an investor, entrepreneur. He does operations, strategy. He kind of does it all. And just like on last week's episode, we talk about AI because that's an area of the business world Matt has been working in for the past few years. He grew up in New Jersey, the oldest of 3 kids. And one of the things I like about Matt is he's just a straight shooter. He's a humble guy. We didn't really talk about running at all, but Matt is a serious runner. Like, this guy runs marathons in under 3 hours, routinely. And the discipline it takes to do something like that is something that carries over into the way Matt approaches his professional life as well. We had a great talk. I really hope you enjoy it. So let's get into it with Matt Koppenheffer. Do you have an early memory of money?
I do. It's kind of surprising to me because my family has always been pretty transparent about money. So it's kind of surprising to me that I don't have an earlier memory, but probably the most notable thing was in middle school and maybe a little bit towards the end of like 5th grade, that sort of thing. Shoveling driveways was a big thing. So when it snowed, North Jersey got a few good snowstorms. I don't know if North Jersey still gets good snowstorms these days, but North Jersey would get a few good snowstorms every year. And when that happened, excited that no school, but even more excited that I could kind of grab my snow shovel, run out and make some money. So it was all about getting out there, knowing the families that would pay you to do it, knowing the families that would pay you well, and knowing the driveways that were easy to shovel. And you could make some pretty decent money. I caught the bad end of it on a few occasions, but mostly it was pretty good. And I have good memories of the shoveling and of the pocketing the money at the end of shuffling.
What were the bad end experiences? Was it just people stiffing you or what? Or just the driveway was terrible?
There is one particular memory of somebody who was, there's, family friends who are connected by multiple layers. My mother grew up in this town in Jersey. So when we moved back there was like all of these connections spidering all over. So it was some sort of family connection. And I went over there and I forget what year it was, but it was one of the years where we had a blizzard. So this was a big snowstorm. This was, I don't want to exaggerate, but it had to be minimum knee deep, that kind of snowstorm. And then you've got the plows coming through and chucking those big ice chunks off the road onto the edge of it. So, this is a big undertaking. And you want to talk about learnings about money, is that a lot of this was sort of on a trust basis as opposed to a negotiated basis of, I'm going to come and I'm going to shovel your driveway. You're going to agree to pay me, but we're going to kind of settle up at the end. And usually there was a make good of, they would see how hard you're working, know how bad the snowstorm was, and they would pay you what's more or less right. This was hours of work. This was a half day of work. This was like backbreaking. My parents stopping by, like, are you all right? Are you going to make it? And then at the end of the day, they settled up, and I forget what it was, but it was a dusting's worth of a payment for a half a day of backbreaking work. And my mom lost her mind.
I want to go back to something you said earlier, which is you said your family was transparent about money. How did that manifest itself? Was it conversations at the dinner table, something like that? Or was it Was it more specific?
It's funny. It's not like we would sit down at the dinner table and talk about, here's how you budget or this part of that. It just was always a natural part of the conversation. So I always had this sort of felt sense of what was going on with our family's finances, for better and worse. Mostly for better, because we were solidly middle class, probably upper middle class. It was tough to judge, because one of the things about money is it's always in comparison to what. And the town that we lived in was a commuter town for New York. So you had a lot of folks working in the city, a lot of folks who had amassed wealth in the city. So you had not a lot of, I wouldn't say, maybe there was massive disparity, but it was disparity on the scope of there's the very rich and then the upper middle class. And so as upper middle class, you felt like, wow, what's going on here? What's the difference here? My parents didn't hide a lot of that stuff. They just kind of talked about it in the open. And so I had this sense of what money could do, and probably to some extent, a little overly inflated sense of what money could do. Because I sort of came through a lot of my childhood thinking more money is unequivocally better. Not just that it is better, more money, all things held equal, is better. But I came with the idea that unequivocally, if you could make more money, that was the way to go.
Other than shoveling snow, what was the first job you had when you were a kid?
The first official jobs were high school. So summers in high school. My mom worked at was head of marketing at a company for a while. And I taught myself some computer programming in middle school. And so in high school, they brought me in to do like some Unix programming. I frankly forget a lot of the stuff that I was doing, but it was backends for survey research that they did. And then my dad had come up through the whole Bell Labs, Lucent, Avaya, all of that. And he got me an internship, or I applied for an internship. I don't know that he could pull those levers quite that much, but I got an internship it was Lucent at that point, my senior year of high school. So they were two very different jobs. I have no idea what they paid, to be honest. I think the marketing one paid reasonably. And I think that went directly to I don't think I ever saw those paychecks. I think they went directly to a savings account. The Lucent one, I think, was probably a pittance, which was fair because I did nothing. I don't think anybody, that was the interesting thing about that job. I couldn't tell what anybody really did.
It sounds like there's a story there. I'm not going to get into it. Let's move on to college. University of Pennsylvania. Do I have this right? A degree in economics and a degree in psychology? Or was it a minor in psych?
A minor in psychology, yeah.
Those are two pretty different things. What's the attraction to each?
Well, they are, unless you talk to Morgan and you get into the psychology of money, right?
True.
That's probably a retrospective confabulation on the combination. I wish I was forethinking enough to say, hey, psychology plays an intimate role in economics and money, and so let me combine the two. Really, I came into college thinking I wanted to make a lot of money, obviously, and a doctor was a good way to do that. My aunt was a doctor. And then I sort of found out the nuts and bolts of what studying for a doctor was going to be. And so I was not going to be a doctor. And then I considered, I actually was a CS major, and I was like, I don't think I can sit behind a computer for 8 hours a day. So I jettisoned that. And then I thought that psychology would be a good kind of middle ground doctor kind of thing.
I don't have to take organic chemistry to be a...
You do, yeah, exactly. So you kind of miss out on that sort of stuff. And then I just took a hard veer into, I was going to go into business because business was going to be a way to make a lot of money. But I was so clueless on it that at University of Pennsylvania, with the Wharton Business School, that, you can get an MBA there, but you get your undergrad, Wharton undergrad too. I did economics, which is like business with your head in the clouds. This is theory. This is stuff that this is the straw man homo economists, and me thinking I'm going to learn business from this.
At what point does investing come into your life?
It was at some point when I was in college. I got a small inheritance when my grandmother passed, and I didn't realize how young Roth IRAs were, but I must have gotten a Roth IRA just a few years after they were introduced. So it was sometime around there, got the inheritance, went into a Roth IRA. I decided that I was going to invest it. I think that was probably, my parents said something about it. In my economics class in high school, we did one of those terrible, terrible stock market games where it was open up the newspaper and look at the ticker symbols, pick a ticker symbol, and next week we will see how you did as a way to teach you about the stock market.
I don't know if you and I have talked about this before. I know I've talked to other people about it. Those things that they do, and it's usually in high school where it's the stock picking contest, those are among the most well-meaning and ill-intentioned
yes
educational vehicles I can think of particularly when it comes to trying to teach young people about investing.
The road
I
to
get why they
financial
do
hell
it.
is paved with good intentions, and
I get why they do it, but it's no, this is teaching all of the wrong lessons when it comes to investing, particularly for young people.
What they need to do is flip it to a investment committee game. So you write an investment proposal for a given stock, and you present it to the teacher in the class, and whichever one is most convincing or gets the most votes for investment, maybe that's the winner, as opposed to that. So yeah, I think it was a combination of those things. I was a big AOL guy when AOL, with the chat rooms, with everything happened within AOL. So naturally, I ran across The Motley Fool as part of that. So The Motley Fool was part of my first introduction to investing, which included the first stock that I invested in, which was AOL.
You graduate with this degree in economics. What did you think you were going to do with it?
I had no idea, except that I figured I could do something with it. And when I was going through this, okay, I'm going to graduate, I'm going to need a job. What the heck do I do? I have an uncle who was phenomenally successful. He built an insurance business and eventually sold it multiple times over, did very well for himself. And so my mom directed me towards him, and she said, "Oh, go talk to your Uncle Dan." And he said to me, "Well, if you don't know what else you're going to do something that will make you a lot of money." And I said, "Okay, talk to me about this. This sounds good."
Go on.
I had to work very hard to build what I built, but I know all of these guys in investment banking who make a ton of money and they don't work very hard. I had no idea what investment banking was. The only thing I knew about banking at that point was the banking where you go into a branch and you give them money and they'll give it back to you later, maybe, unless it's 2009. So I said, "This sounds great." And what I didn't realize was when he said investment banking generally, he meant sales trading. But I took that at the word and I was like, I'm going to do investment banking. So I started lining up interviews because Penn that's a great thing about the school is they bring in all of these. And then with his help, with his connections, I got interviews with Goldman Sachs, with Bear Stearns, with Credit Suisse. And boy, was that a learning experience, because so many of these kids from Penn, they had parents who were investment bankers. They had friends who were investment bankers. They had done internships junior and senior year at investment banks. They knew the score. I had read a couple of 10Ks of AOL and like Pfizer. And I'm going into these interviews, and it was like, you've got these 20-something analysts and associates doing these interviews, long days, just bored out of their mind. And they were like sharks with blood in the water. So the one with Credit Suisse in particular, they got a whiff of that I didn't really know what I was talking about. And they just dug in. They just rattled off like, okay. They said, what would you look at in terms of the financials? And I said, well, this was for a drug company. I think I mentioned Pfizer. And I said, well, I would look at the percentage that they're spending on R&D to see if they're going to be able to build out their pipeline. And there's something about the way that I responded that they must have gotten that sense of, this kid, this is surface deep. And they just they ripped me apart. So that was fun. And my wife had done a semester in Berkeley, so she moved out to the West Coast. And investment banking, you got to do that in New York, right? But here I am. I'm like, I've got to follow. This is the woman I love. I've got to go out to the West Coast. So I go into the Goldman Sachs interview, and we're in the interview, and I'm like, this is all well and good, but if you do want to bring me on, I've got to be in your West Coast office. And they just look at me like, do you know what this is and who we are? So, learning experience. I ended up finding a smaller boutique investment bank called Thomas Weisel. They were headquartered in San Francisco. And I think either they ran out of other good candidates from Goldman Sachs and everybody else snapping them up, or what, where I slept in the Holiday Inn Express before that interview. But I ended up getting a job with them. So I moved out to San Francisco and took a job there.
Since you brought her up, how much did you and your now wife talk about money before you got married?
A lot. We were, I don't think we combined our finances before we got married, but we were dating for 7 years. No, 5 years. 5 years before we got married. And we treated it very much almost like it was merged at that time. So we knew student debt situation. We were both pretty conservative in terms of our spending. So we weren't coming in with credit card debt or anything like that. Knew about, bank accounts, savings, everything. So when we got married, there weren't really any surprises. There was a lot for us to learn on that front. And there's continued to be plenty for us to learn because it evolves over time. But I think what we did from the start in terms of having those open communication channels was the critical piece, because as we've gone along, we've had differences, we've had learning to do, but the fact that we've been there and been open to talk about it and to always bring it to the fore has been the game changer.
Coming up, I talked to Matt about AI stocks and where he thinks we are right now in the current investing landscape. Last week's conversation with John Rotanti has me thinking more about the question of whether we're in an AI bubble. And if you want to research AI stocks or any other type of stocks, you got to check out Ticker. You get access to the same kind of data the Wall Street pros use, but Ticker makes it simple enough for everyday investors like you and me. And unlike a Bloomberg terminal, Ticker does not cost an arm and a leg. Join the growing crowd of investors across America and around the world that are using Ticker to speed up their research. Just go to Ticker, type in the name of a public company, and you will instantly see years of financials, analyst forecasts, and insider trades all in one place. And you can try it for free when you go to ticker.com/unplugged. It gives you an easy way to get investing ideas and learn from the best. Because one more way you can use it is to track big name money managers to see what they're buying and selling. Save time and try it for free by going to ticker.com/unplugged. That's TIKR.com/unplugged. It is the cleanest, easiest way to look deeper into any stock and see what the pros are doing. So click the link in the show notes or go to ticker.com/unplugged. All right, let's get back to Matt. John Bertanti was on the show last week, and at the end of the episode, he was talking about investing in AI and, you know, whether or not we're in a bubble right now. And if you think we are, should you be investing? And he believes the answer is not necessarily no, that sort of thing. You're someone who has had jobs very much related to AI. You're interested in the topic. You've worked with large language models. From an investing standpoint, where do you think we are right now?
I want to be cautious about any timing around calling a bubble before I get into any of this. I personally think we're relatively early in the AI bubble. And I say in the AI bubble because it is a bubble and it will inflate and it will, because I mean, this is how these things happen. There is a legitimate technological transformation. There is legitimate productivity that's coming out of it. But what happens is the excitement and the financing and the building around that runs ahead of itself. And then you get, it's when those tentacles start to really get out into other parts of the economy. I've been thinking a lot about this, and one of the things that I could totally be missing something, but one of the things that you see right now is all of the circular financing that you've heard a lot of people talk about. It's really incestuous. So it's really happening within those. And granted, NVIDIA is what, a $5 trillion company now? So something bad happens to NVIDIA, an impact to a $5 trillion company, that blows a pretty big hole. But if you think about the 2009 crisis, you've got banks, very interconnected. If you go back to the dot-com crisis, that was connected out into the real economy because you had a lot more hiring taking place. So I don't want to digress too much, but I think we're relatively early. Part of that is because I don't think it's gotten out into the real economy quite as much yet. And secondly, because you have so many people talking about it being a bubble. That's the problem, is that it's hard for a bubble to inflate when everybody's like, hey, this is a bubble, stop. This is getting ahead of itself.
Let's go to the speed round. What is a thing that you have bought that makes you happy?
So I'm actually going to say my house. The funny thing about things that you buy, physical possessions you buy with money, is that typically you have that, buy it, happy about it, and then it blends into the background. That's generally the way it goes. We custom designed this house. It was pretty bougie move. But my wife worked with architect. My wife had an incredible vision for this, and we designed this exactly how our family was going to function. It's not overly large. It's just really well designed for how we live. And we had my father-in-law move in with us, so there's space for him. And we're years into living in this, and I still, it was a terrible process, by the way. Like, custom building a house, it was awful. But years later, I do something, I look at something, they're like, we decided it was going to be like that, and I love it that way.
Nice. Have you ever made a purchase that you regret and sometimes you still find yourself thinking about it?
I probably have, Chris, and I may just not be thinking hard enough. I mean, one of the things is, I won't say that I never regret anything, but I generally try to live in such a way that things happen that they happen. I do the things that I do, and I learn from the things that don't go right, as opposed to saying, spending time wishing it didn't happen. At the same time, I'm a huge fan of a good return policy. And I make liberal use of return policy. So if I buy something or I get something and I'm like, I have any hint of this is not going to work out, that's going back. So probably the things I would have regretted spending money on, they're already back there.
So part of your shopping process is, let me take a minute and look at the return policy.
100%. And I won't pay a huge premium, but I'll pay a little bit of a premium in order to have, a good, at least 30 days, 90-day return policy. I mean, what's REI, like 12 months? That's, you've got a lot of time to avoid regret.
What is the last thing you splurged on just for yourself, not for your wife or your kids or anyone else, just you?
This is a funny one because, different perspectives on money and what it means to splurge. I think it was Brian on your show, Brian Hinman on your show, who talked about coffee, right? So I've got single origin coffee shipped to me on a weekly basis so that every morning, grinding fresh single origin coffee, delicious stuff. And I don't think about that as a splurge. That's foundational. I think probably the splurge is running gear. Greenville has one of Adidas's 2 employee stores here. And so you can get all of the top, their new top gear at 50% off. So I'll go there and 50% off, not a splurge, but I will get 4 or 5 pair of shoes. And my closet looks like a running shoe store. So that's the thing that I go a little nuts on.
What is something about money that you wish you knew earlier?
I wish I had a better sense of getting money and earning money is fine, but developing ways to create value or creating something that drives value is far more important. So you can do a wide variety of things to put money in your bank account, but if you can develop some skill set, some personal brand, a company, something that creates value, you can use that over and over again. And it's worth the investment. It's worth not, taking a step back from earning a lot of money in order to develop that, because it's going to benefit you so much more over time.
What is a charitable cause that you like to support?
We're typically pretty opportunistic and local with charity. So, I'll throw myself under the bus. My wife is way more generous than me, and she has done a great job taking me along with her, which I really appreciate. But we look for local opportunities. An example of that is last year we got hit with Hurricane Helene, and Asheville, just north of us, got hit far worse. And she went hog wild in a good way, in a very good way, going out and buying out the stores of all kind of stuff, and sending it up through my son's school. I think driving up a bunch of it herself. She went up and was like cutting trees. I mean, she pretty amazing. So that kind of stuff where we can spend money on things for local communities. It's not a tax effective strategy as some charity is, because most of this is not tax deductible. But we like to see that impact.
Do you have a favorite movie or television series that has money as a through line?
I will be blown away if you have gotten this answer before. I had a tough time coming up with this, but I Heart Huckabees is my favorite movie. And I think that the kind of what I've learned over time about money and how I feel about money is kind of reflected there. So you've got, in this movie, Jude Law is sort of chasing after money and status, and it destroys him. And Jason Schwartzman, on the other hand, is thumbing his nose at money and status and everything else, and it destroys him. And it kind of reflects over a lot of hard learning where I've come to, where if you're not happy and you're not living the life that you want, money's not going to change that. Money's not going to do that for you. On the other hand, by saying, I don't care about money, money's not important, you're not going to be in a good place going that way either. There's a middle ground between those two where you'll find your happiness and find, I think, more peace.
The last thing is a penny for your thoughts. And this is just any kind of advice you want to share with people who are listening. It doesn't have to be about money, but it can be.
Try not to take everything so seriously. And this is more a reminder to myself maybe than anything else. The Earth itself is not even the rock star planet of our solar system, let alone the galaxy or the universe. There are people who have invented things that have been critical to where we are today that nobody remembers, nobody knows who they are. So, anything that happens today or this year or the next 50 years. I mean, Taylor Swift is great. If Taylor Swift is remembered 100 years from now, let alone 1,000 years from now, it would probably be surprising. So let go. It's not that big of a deal.
There you go. To get more of Matt Koppenheffer's insights and analysis on business, investing, AI, and more, check out his site, mattkoppenheffer.com. I put a link in the show notes. He's just a really smart guy, and he writes in a way that helps me understand things like cutting-edge technologies. There's good stuff to be found on his site, so check it out. I'm Chris Hill. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week.